Well, we're going to talk much more about Brexit and its implications. I'm glad to say I'm joined here in the studio by the Nobel Prize-winning economist, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, who's got a new book out. It's called The Euro, How a Common Currency Threatens the Future of Europe. Thank you very much for being with us, Professor Stiglitz. And I know the thesis of your book really is that the Euro has undermined the EU, has been a destructive force. Does that mean you think the British people were right to vote for Brexit?
That's a slightly different issue. The failure of the Eurozone, I think, it did feed into the outcome of the Brexit. I mean, you're looking across the channel and you see a Eurozone that's not working, where large parts of the Eurozone are actually in a depression deeper than the Great Depression. And you see across that channel a Eurozone where one country is really dominating economic power with an ideology that really is out of sync with much of the rest of the world.
Well, you're talking about Germany.
Yes.
Yeah. But do you think then that the EU, as it is now, is fatally flawed? I mean, obviously the British people voted to leave it, but perhaps partly, maybe because of what you say, the Eurozone, but largely also because of the free movement of people and immigration.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think it's fatally flawed, but the Euro, I argue, was flawed at birth. That doesn't mean that the problems can't be addressed, and I try to explain what were the flaws at birth. You know, the problem wasn't the structure of the individual countries, but the structure of the Eurozone itself, and that's where you need to focus structural reform. And the same thing more broadly. You know, you could keep the idea of free movement as an ultimate goal, but say in the meanwhile, you know, we have to have ways of managing this, and that free movement imposes particularly large costs on particular countries. Okay. And the collectivity, the Eurozone as a whole, has to share those costs. And, you know, those are just basic economic principles.
So, you know, whatever the rights and wrongs of Brexit, I'm not quite sure whether you support it or not from what you've said, but what do you think, now that you're here in Britain, should be Britain's relationship once it leaves with the European Union once it leaves? What is the future for the UK outside the EU?
Well, this is going to have to be a result of mutual discussions. I hope Europe takes the view that the benefits of close economic integration, as close as can be consistent with the votes of the people of the UK, is what they should be striving for. You know, there were some people right after the vote, like Juncker, who said, we're going to give it to the UK. And when he went on to say, because we have to be sure that no one else leaves. And to me, when he said that, there was a very odd, because
I think one of your theses is that the EU sort of threatens people. It rules by fear, isn't it?
Yeah, precisely. And that the benefits of the EU should be sufficiently clear that people would want to stay in. And he might have said, you know, we haven't done as good a job as we could have explaining those benefits. You know, that you could understand. But saying we are going to keep the EU together by fear is exactly the kind of attitude that drove the UK out of the EU and will drive other countries out of the EU.
And talking about sort of, I suppose, the way that Brussels runs the EU, we had that fascinating decision by the Competition Commissioner yesterday to demand 13 billion euros worth of back tax from Apple in the Republic of Ireland. What were your thoughts about that?
I think that was precisely correct, and here is where...
You think the EU was right to demand
absolutely,
that?
Absolutely. And when you have a common currency or a common EU, your regulatory structure has to focus on those areas where the action of one country has adverse effects on others. You know, that's what the rules have to be about.
But you don't think that the Republic of Ireland, as a sovereign country, has the right to make its own tax policy? It says it doesn't even want this 13 billion euros.
Not when it puts a harm on the rest of Europe. And what it was doing was basically siphoning tax revenue that would have gone to other European countries, bringing a very little bit of it to Ireland with a very few jobs, but imposing enormous costs on the rest of Europe. That's wrong.
But it was good for Ireland.
It's morally wrong and it's economically wrong, but that's why you have to have rules. If the EU is going to work together, it has to have rules of some country poaching, taking advantage of others.
But does that mean then that Britain, once it's out of the EU, will be in a better position because it could say to people like Apple, okay, if you can't function in the EU, come to us. We've got a low rate of corporation tax.
The answer to that is no, that won't be allowed. We have international rules as well, and the OECD is in a process called BEPS, base erosion and profit shifting, to stop this going on. The EU should have said what Apple is doing is not allowed from our side. So you have to attack it from both sides. What Ireland was doing was wrong, but there was also a failure in each of the EU countries in not saying what Apple was doing is wrong. So these problems of tax avoidance, tax evasion are so serious that they have to be attacked from all sides. The Panama Papers, the LuxLeaks brought that out so vividly.
Professor Joseph Stiglitz, so good to talk to you. We could probably talk all afternoon. It's really fascinating, but look forward to reading more of your book, The Euro, How a Common Currency Threatens the Future of Europe. Many thanks for being with us today.
Nice to be here.
Thank you.